If it's Mondays, it's time for.
Ask the
That's the
Oracle.
Oracle.
That is right, and we're back today, and it's we have a wonderful show lined up. And before we go to our very special guest, I want to check in with Monty. Oh, and Amy is back. Amy, how you feeling? And how was your week?
Everything's good. I had to burrow in, which is a good thing. But, I'm the kind of person, I'm a createaholic, right? I think you guys all know that. So I don't stop until, something makes me stop. So,
And if you don't know she's a creatoraholic, just buy this book and you'll find out all about it.
yeah, I crashed. We all do that sometimes.
We've
It
been
just made
worried.
me rest, but it kind of ties in with what we're talking about today because it's the time we kind of turn inward. We have to make our little cocoon and burrow in, the dark nights, face the dark night of the soul. And that's what we're going to talk about with Onareo, our special guest today. Hi, Onareo.
Yeah, yes, we are. I was just thinking that that's kind of like I have my Aries moon, and that's like really that burnout. Like you do, and you do all this stuff, and you do all this stuff until you just, shut down because of all this stuff you're doing or planning to do. And for me, it manifests in my, in my head in general. It's like, I have so much to do that I'm already thinking about it in the morning. And by midday, I'm already worn out and I haven't gotten to half of it.
Yeah, we know it's a hard lesson to learn, to stop before something stops us. But yeah, it's like now we're in flames, right?
What Aries, in my experience, are always leaning into the tape. What runners say is leaning into the tape. Trying to get to the finish line ahead of themselves. So, but Jeffrey,
But they might fall, right? They might fall just because they're not keeping the.
I haven't been doing too much innovation this week, but I know, Jeff, you have been with the NFTs.
Yes, I have been actually. This month I launched my own my own collection of NFTs. I should say some are hand drawn, some are created by computer, and we launched a whole world called Pulveria. And I'm grateful to some of the people here who are watching our show because they've been supporting my art. And I've only recently, like literally like in the last month or so, decided to do all this. And there's lots of learning. So the my art's continuing, and this month is what's called the generative NFT phase, which means these are being generated, being put up for sale, and only till the end of the year, people get to actually name these pieces of art in their name if they choose. And then starting in January, the art will be more generally available. In addition, for longtime viewers of Ask the Oracles, I am working on a podcast. That is right. Today's episode will be included in the podcast for Ask the Oracles because, just in case you can't get enough Ask the Oracles each week, we are going to have the podcast available. And in 2022, with my sister Lauren, we're going to actually be adding an ATO newsletter. So this will be an opportunity for our audience to connect with us. And if any of you watching today live or listening to the replay, if you have suggestions for topics for future shows, please don't be shy. We're always looking for topics to cover, areas to follow, and really grateful for the opportunity to have a global audience and to be here. So it's but yeah, if I was being self-serving and doing shameless self-promotion, I would mention two things. One is to go to pulveria.xyz to check out the art, and if you still and you don't have to admit it to anyone if you don't know what an NFT is and you want to learn. Next week on Monday and Tuesday, I'm doing classes. I'm teaching live classes myself where we're going to cover a variety of topics. And I think that in this week's show, we're actually giving out raffles for people for a random drawing after the show for people who want to learn. I'm ready to teach. So I'm working on that stuff. But I do think it's the creativity, right? Because I kind of like look at strengthening your inner lights as sort of a mantra. And for me, it's like, what do I do to keep positive in challenging times? And for me, it's embracing creativity, and it's finding those things that bring joy and delight into my life. And no matter how difficult it might be on the outside, how stormy it might be, if I could keep that light on and always keep that light on, then anything stays possible. And it's that positivity that, oh, there you are. Look at that, keeping the light on. Exactly, right?
We just didn't pay our bill.
I happen to be one that agrees with you, Jeff, about creativity because you know we have to find that place where we kind of shut out the bad things, especially now where you know we're kind of surrounded by anxiety and fear and the unknown, and that scares people. You know, it's like these waves that have come during the pandemic, and now there's like a new wave of anxiety. So how do you deal with that? You either meditate. I mean, creativity is a meditation. I find there's different forms of meditation, right, Onareo? I mean, there's active meditations, which Aries love that, right? Aries, cooking is a meditation. Anything that brings you into the moment, out of the anxiety and out of the fear and out of the worry. I'm talking with cards today. We have to be more introspective
Ooh.
and find a way to recharge.
She's back, everybody.
Yes, she's back.
I think that's very important what you said about you know, taking the time and you know, a lot of people think meditation is just sitting down and having no thoughts or anything, you know, which is almost really impossible, right? To quiet the mind, because the mind's function is really to think, right? So we're always going to be thinking specifically when we're actually setting time aside, we're going to be thinking more because we're allowing that space, right? So it's really finding what works best. As you said, as an Aries, that maybe you said it, you know, you said it as a kind of like joke, but in reality, I think for me also, I like meditations that I have to either have a visualization, a particular visualization that I have to follow, right? Like guided meditations are really helpful for me because I'm very visual. But the very act of creating, as you yourself were talking about, painting, collaging, doing a vision board, just sitting down and journaling, those are very good practices as far as meditation goes, at least for me. So
Yes, I think, I mean, we've read statistics that depression and anxiety are off the roof. Right. If we happen to glance at a headline, it's scary stuff, right? So this solstice time, which is actually tomorrow, it does represent the dark night of the soul. I think, you know, in ancient times, people were afraid maybe that the sun wasn't going to come back, so they designed all kinds of rituals to pray for the light, And we here in our group, we're light workers. And what does that mean? It means staying positive, right, Jeff?
I think staying positive is key, particularly under challenging times, and to find and allow yourself, if you do fall down, to know that you can pick yourself up, and to know that the light, that sometimes we do have to go into darkness to find the light, and that was very much how I discovered my passion for the night sky. In fact, was the very first time I knowingly sat underneath the Milky Way. I had this, you know, awakening that it's the darkness where we see the light, and that not only metaphorically but spiritually just brings you into another plane. And it was just really, really cool and awe-inspiring for me. And so it's you know, we sometimes we do fall, but we have the ability to pick up and to stay positive. And you know, when everyone else around you is negative and you're staying positive, it's really hard sometimes, really, because it's, you want to be positive, you don't want to be acting positive, you want to be true to yourself. And there's this, and people know if you're just pretending, right? And the other side of it is, if you go into a negative state, how to get out of it, because it's hard, right? So finding those things that give you root, that help you do that. So my rituals, you know, grounding is great. Showers, so me, water, you know, I use the shower as when I can't get close to the ocean, I will, there's something about the water that helps reboot and recharge, and just gives me something which is missing. And so that's what I do. And I will look into my head and think about not what I didn't do yet, but for the ideas for what to do in the future. And this weekend, I was overloaded in a positive way of all these wonderful new things to do. So I'm going into the solstice, and I'm going into the new year with a new charge, if you will. Unbounded opportunities are waiting, and it just to allow yourself not to be overwhelmed and not to feel guilty of the ideas that you had to leave on the table, but to know that we can go in and bring things forward. And it's these are not the easiest times. We I don't think none of us have lived through a pandemic before, at least in this physical lifetime that I'm aware of, at least this type of pandemic. And business rules are changing. There's friends of mine listening in Europe, and my friends in Europe told me this weekend about all these various countries that are shutting down, because we were thinking about travel for next year and doing things, and out of the blue, people were, all their plans have shut down. And so just staying positive with my friends and giving them hope to that it's hard. In the end, though, I do believe we get through this. And it's I don't know. I believe in the where we can go. The technology will take us so far, but it's up to the soul. It's up to the light. It's up to our ability to connect with each other in a meaningful way that brings us all forward. Monty, you've been putting out messages for the solstice on Facebook, I recall, including some interesting photos. Could you elaborate about your message for the solstice?
Well, as the solstice is coming in, this is a chart of where everything is in the sky right now. And for those of you who follow me, you know that a chart looks like a pizza. The horizon line here is the horizon. Everything here these are the planets that are below the Earth as viewed from East Hampton, which is where I am. Up here is where the planets are now. But at the same time that the sun over here, wait, let me put the little magnifier on it. And if the sun is the dot in the center of the circle, see it's at 29 degrees Sagittarius. That's what the arrow is. When it goes into Capricorn, which is this weird symbol here, that's the solstice, and the days start getting longer. But at the same time that we have the solstice going on, we have a square, a 90-degree angle between Saturn, 10 degrees Aquarius, the wavy lines are Aquarius, and Uranus up here, which is the ruler of Aquarius, 11 degrees Taurus. And as Saturn goes on the 24th, it'll be exact for the third time since February. And what that means is it's sort of like Saturn is the lockdown, Uranus is enough with the lockdowns. So I think that things are going to change actually by April. And because you're starting to see, even in mainstream media, they're starting to talk about the pandemic of the vaccinated. And Luc Montagnier, the Nobel laureate virologist, said at the beginning of this whole thing that it's not a great idea to vaccinate during a pandemic. And we actually did live through another pandemic, Jeff.
Yeah.
1969.
Yeah, and there's something in astrology called the Soros cycle. What it does is it tracks the shadow of. But I want to talk about one more thing astrologically. Okay. It tracks the shadow of how the shadow falls across from eclipses on the Earth, and the one we just had the other day goes back to 67, which was during that pandemic, or just before that, and Summer of Love stuff. But I wanted to say something, and I just don't want to forget it. We're talking about fear, and one of the things that people don't talk about is this thing, which is Chiron, which is a comet, which is a ball of ice, which sounds so specious, but a chart because it tells you where childhood traumas are. And Chiron has been in the sign of Aries, and that's why we're all dealing with fear. Because Aries come into this world to learn about bravery. Aquarians come in to learn about being different. Taurians come in to learn about being solid and following the plan. In other words, we come in, and all these books that talk about our sign, they should be telling us, like my books do.
In other words, you're not already.
You don't come in cooked. You come in to learn about your sign. And so we're all learning about fear. That when Chiron is in Aries.
Meaning we have to become braver.
Exactly. And, Amy asked me before, well, what's the best way, to get into what was it?
Share the light.
To share the light. It's like, and, how do we get rid of the fear? You can share the light right now, get rid of the fear right now, but you have to have confidence. You have to have faith. And that's what the solstice is all about, which is why it became Christmas.
This is the moon card of the tarot, which is all about having faith in the darkness. Not knowing exactly where you're going to go, but traveling through the darkness and keeping your light shining.
It's like what Jeffrey was saying about having to be a positive light for other people who are now starting to freak out. Like they locked down the Netherlands on Saturday suddenly out of the blue.
Right. Yes.
That's going to help. It's like it wasn't Einstein, they attribute it to Einstein, but doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result is
It's
insanity.
insanity. Yeah.
The roller coaster ride, right? And then who do you trust? We all have to trust our inner self, and that's what this time is a challenge. I mean, in fact, the whole pandemic, we have sort of been in the cave, in our solitude, in the darkness, not knowing what's going to happen. So it's been like one long solstice, right, Onareo?
Yeah, I think it's I think from any side of the spectrum, right? You know, when you're guided by fear, whether it's fear of medicine, whether it's fear of science, whether it's fear of God, whether it's fear of of you know, organizations in general, right? You're in the fight or flight response, right? So it's like the vagus nerve. And I did a class on that, how it relates to the fool recently, and it is really a physical response. It's really it's something you can't control. It just automatically happens, right? So we have to be aware, right? So awareness is key always, and using the metaphor, right, of the light, of the speck of light during the time of darkness, right? Because it's really being aware of where could we go, right? In different, it can go this way, it can go that way, right? And being able to remain centered. So what Jeff was saying about grounding, you know, grounding and centering, which is like kind of overused, but a lot of people don't do it. It's really very important, because if you don't do that at the very beginning of your day, let's say you're not grounded, right? You don't know where you're going. You don't know where the path, it's kind of like going outside of your house with your eyes closed, right? Without any, obviously not referencing to anybody with a vision impairment, right? But in general, it's like willingly going out with your eyes closed and like going up the stairs, and you might make it to the top, but you're definitely gonna probably trip, or you know, and fall on your face, etc., right? Or have to come back up. So I think it's interesting, our concept of how we're afraid of the unknown, and in this metaphor of darkness, right? Which people were afraid because obviously if the sun doesn't come back, there's not going to be crops, there's not going to be, you know, fruits, etc., right? But darkness is all there is all the time, right? So we come out of darkness, we're in the womb where it's dark there, you know, when we die, we go through a threshold, it's different, you know, a different type of darkness. And the light is something that guide us, right, in our darkness, but it doesn't mean that darkness is bad, right? It means that it's only going to be dark until you shine the light and see what's there, right? So I think it's our sense of direction is really why we should continue to explore, right? Where are we headed, right? And I think Jeff was mentioning something very important about our ideas. Sometimes we're thinking in this linear time all the time. We're thinking of like, oh, I have a deadline, I have to do this, I have all these ideas, so I have to make them work right now, which is our conversation about being Aries, right? And getting it done. I think you have to be okay. I think our main lesson, especially during this time of quieting down and exploring what's in the dark, it's really about allowing yourself to just be, right? You know, just be right now. You don't have to do anything, you know, besides obviously eat and the basics, right? You're not forced to be successful right now. You're not forced to be, you know, it's really about being present, as you were saying earlier with the meditation. And when that is there, everything has the chance to happen, right? Everything else, the light, it has the chance to come in, and you know, and that's my thought on that.
And if you take that to the next step, you know, if you were to, you know, cover your eyes, if you are sighted for a period of time, your other senses become much more active. And if you have the ability to smell, or for that matter for taste, and for that matter to hear, when one of your senses is blocked, usually the others become much more sensitive, and you become much more aware. And so if you're actually not, if you're, you know, if there's darkness that you're fighting, if you actually just shut down your ability to look, you start to feel other things, you get to experience other things, and gives you insight into a world which is always near you, but not necessarily are you conscious of it. And number of years ago, I did a conscious experiment. I was in Penn Station during rush hour with a friend of mine, and we stood there and we tuned into and only listened to, we were just standing still, listening, tuning in first to the people, the buskers who were playing music in the subway station against the wall of the Penn Station, listening to the ununderstandable announcements coming over the PA. While everyone else, and we were in our own flow, but we couldn't help but observe how no one else was really in the now with us. That we were watching people going from place A to place B, but they were not present. They were rushing, running, yelling, screaming, but not present. And we methodically walked almost like a trance for an hour and a half like that, without speaking to anybody, without speaking to each other. But we were tuning in, and we were attracted by the sounds. We followed where the sound was, and this took me in and out of Penn Station, went all around 34th Street, all the way back. We might have looked zombie-like or something in that way, but we were never more alive and never more present. And by turning off our own voice and listening only to the noises around us, we experienced something which very few other people did. It made me so much aware of being in the flow of the now. And the more we didn't speak, the more we heard. And we were able to tune into conversations close to us. We were able to tune in conversations far, far away from us, because we were in that flow. And it really just was an inspiring moment. It wasn't the not talking part. It was just the observation of how busy everybody else was to experience life. So while we were there together, the life that we watched were people not necessarily being present at all. And I mention all of this because when you're looking to get grounding, when you're looking to use, okay, these are all overused words in our vernacular, but if you're trying to actually get a sense of being present, be present. And don't talk about it, do it, right? And it's those actions that make you aware of things that you don't need any special tools. You don't have to buy anything. You just have to apply yourself. And like magic, it just all appears. And that ability to spend 90 minutes or so, or 75, 90 minutes going around Penn Station very quietly, very, very eloquently, is a moment that it's 75 minutes I still take with me today. And it was just so special to do that. And so for me, it's, the rituals we think about and the magic that follows is up to us. But if we could find what we need, there's nothing, there is nothing to fear but fear itself. That's true. But it's our understanding of ourselves. Once we start to understand who we are, many of us will realize you are truly unbounded. Anything becomes possible. You just have to allow yourself to believe. And even in the darkest of the darkest nights, light will come out and a new day will begin. And every day, starts with that sunrise. And for me, that's symbolic of hope. That's symbolic of opportunities, which is why I obsess with taking photographs of sunrises and sunsets. And then, of course, the night sky, because there's a message each and every day. And while it may be rote for some, the natural beauty is something which is just something to experience.
That's good stuff, Jeff. I think, it's important to remember that we're all a reflection of these cycles and rhythms of nature. And particularly now, I think, if you are attuned, like Jeff, you were saying, in the moment, it is a time to be quiet. And, I had a bad cold last week, and I know it was just to put me in that space, because this is time to turn inward, to be more quiet, to be more in touch with your inner world. And astrologically, we have this push and pull. So you have to also remember what's toxic for you.
Yes.
Reading the news and the bad headlines is going to trigger your anxiety and your worry, or eating too much sugar or whatever it is that's a trigger for you. Now's the time to kind of let go of those bad habits.
I don't know if people, if everybody follows me here on Facebook, but I've been saying for a while, and I'm talking about since 2016, that if everybody keeps this polarized anger and seeing other people as less than human, people are going to get sick. And I kept saying this again and again and again, because there's no way that you can allow hate for other people, whether they're righties, lefties, Republicans, Democrats, all these words. Now it's the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. And I knew people were going to get sick. I didn't realize it was going to be as big as it turned out. But even now, you can see that the people who are supposed leaders are still trying to steer the narrative towards
Polarity.
polarity. This is us and this is them. And I used to wonder, how did Nazi Germany do what it did? And now I know. You make people as less than human. And we got to stop. We all have to realize we're all people. We're all in this together. Or else, once again, if it comes back to, oh my God, January 6th and Trump and, whatever, there's people are going to stay sick. They're going to stay sick.
All that blame game is very old paradigm, right? So
Yeah.
if we're really light workers, if we're really on a spiritual path, we have to embrace the interconnectedness, and also to get in touch with the shadow part of us that does want to blame and complain and not take responsibility.
It's so patriarchal.
Shadow.
The shadow. The shadow knows.
Shadow knows. The shadow knows.
Shadow knows.
Well, we
I
talk
think.
about shadow.
Oh,
I don't know.
Oh no, that I was gonna say, based on what you were talking, both Jeff and Amy and Monty. I think there's the Buddhist practice, right, which doesn't have to be religious, right, which is loving kindness meditation, and it's really about everybody, right? So it's like made you be well, made you healthy, etc. And then you sit down and you put this intention to everybody. You do it for yourself, and then you do it for humankind, right? And what it does really, it's put you in that place. It's not like magic. They're not magic words, right? It's really putting yourself in that essence of, you are my equal, you are my mirror, you are that other me, right? So when we are in that space, we're able to heal. It doesn't mean we're gonna agree, or and it doesn't mean that everything's gonna be fine, right? Because there's still gonna be people that are a-holes or whatever. But you still put yourself in that. You're doing the work, and really, it is about doing the work. As Jeff was saying, not if you're gonna do something, just do it. Don't talk about it. Don't try to pretend that you're doing it and you're not doing it, right? So walk the talk, really.
Absolutely, walk the talk, and we're all challenged to be vigilant about making those good habits. But I do feel that each of us contributes so much to the larger picture, to the bigger, and we can't forget that. Even though it's like a little thing, that meditation you just talked about, Onareo, that's powerful, and that can spread the light. And so we're talking about energy, being in a good energetic space. What other rituals do you think? I like the shower thing. I mean, simple rituals work, right? I mean, we can all light a candle tomorrow and really think about these things, because our thoughts are real.
So for me, since you're asking about particular rituals, and I think I mentioned some of these in a podcast about rating aftercare, because it's kind of the same thing, kind of like how you're taking care of your body and your energetic body, right? So sometimes when you're I don't have a bathtub, so I cannot take like a sinking bath, right? I'll just take like sea salt, right? Like pour sea salt, and then just really scrub it on my soles, on my feet. And as I'm doing that, I'm talking about what I'm trying to let go of, right? Either the stress of the day, either I'm feeling too kind of like lightheaded or too much worry, etc. And that really, as soon as I get out, I feel better already. And then again, it's not magical in the sense of like, it's really that intention that I'm setting, and the physical act of salt and scrubbing the feet, right? And sometimes, if when I'm doing, readings and stuff, and in between readings, I feel kind of like that. I cannot just jump in the shower. I'll just take a bit of salt and I'll just put it in my tongue. And really that salt, like that's really very grounding when you put that little bit of salt in the tip of your tongue. And really it's that sensory experience that Jeff was talking about. Really, it's getting back to your body. We're always in our head. You know, we fall in love with our head, we fight with our head, we create scenarios with our head, we do all the good stuff and the bad stuff with our mind, right? So it's really getting back to the body and grounding. If you can get outside and walk and touch a plant and just talk to a plant, that's like, I love doing that all the time, because it's really getting back in touch with nature.
Right. Another thing that we do, I mean, we can do it for the solstice and moving into the new year, or writing down things that we want to let go of and then burning that in a cauldron or in your with your candle magic tonight. To really be conscious of what we want to let go of for this year. And then you can bring in your intention for the new year. You got to clear space. That's what you were talking about in our conversation this morning. About you got to clean your attic, right? You got to clean out the crap for the new year.
I think that. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to mention, and part of the rituals also for me is, the salt sounds. I mean, I got to try that. I remember to do something for myself, self-love, and it's when I'm, particularly when I'm under a lot of pressure and I'm feeling the heaviness of something. Whenever possible, I will do something for myself, and it's so subtle, most people won't know. But like amateur radio, ham radio, which is one of my absolute passions, in the era of the internet, it's become a service where there are companies actually that charge a fee to let you remote control a super ham radio station almost anywhere in the world. And so every once in a while, I go online and I may make a few contacts with people all over the world remotely, all using the software, but it creates this greater awareness and connectivity to me that I forget about whatever is bothering me. And I'm able to then use that as a bridge into something else. So I politely distract myself by doing something that I'm passionate for. So I reconnect the passion, and that changes my mood, usually changes how I feel, and that better equips me to deal with what's in front of me. I'm not really avoiding it as much as being better prepared for it. And so I'm not denying it. It's just, for me, it's those elements of self-love where we do something kind for ourselves, something meaningful. So, the shower for me is very cool. And while I don't really enjoy going in the ocean, I love walking on sand. So where I'm near a beach, I will feel the sand whenever possible. It's that texture. It's very tactile. And so the sand for me is meaningful. And, whenever permits, I love hosting guided star meditations. There's something very soothing by being the person to share a meditation that's dynamic, where people are lying down. Almost everyone falls asleep, but they look up and I tell them to look at the star and to bring that into themselves. And my most fun sometimes is taking photographs of everyone sleeping and then people arguing with me that they really were awake. And perhaps they were awake, but not necessarily the same awake that we know. But those are things for me that I use for grounding. And by the way, it's not just that finding that inner light in times of trouble, right? Even in times of good times, I need to do things to recenter. And yeah, I can tell you that if I sat down with somebody for a reading and they're draining me, I have to stop and I have to do something, or I just will fall asleep. I mean, it's a good sign for me is if I need to sleep after doing readings, I should stop the readings and do a reset on me. Because after a while, I just, I'm useless anyway, so I might as well use it as a sign to relax. So it's and I think this is something that's universal, that if anyone feels the need to change direction, to recharge, change a mood, do something for yourself. Don't have to tell anyone. Just love yourself enough to take care of yourself that way.
Yeah,
we had a friend, the late Randy Worth, who once told us, nothing's ever as bad as you think it's going to be, and nothing's ever as good as you think it's going to be. And we think about that a lot.
Balance, right?
Because that's the Buddhist sweet spot. You were talking about Buddhism before, Onareo. But the same thing is true of the present condition of the pandemic and the lockdowns, because once again, it has forced everybody to become a monk in the cave and to face the fact, A, do you like your cave? Can you handle not traveling and not
How do
going?
you make it pretty?
Yeah. Can you get some art for your cave? But once again, we're all confronted with who we are, which is not a bad thing. Yes, the pandemic is horrible and people die, but people die every day.
We have to face our shadows and embrace all the different parts of ourselves, or else, we're not living in reality, which I guess is why so many people are on anti-anxiety drugs, etc. They want to escape that. But, it's really so fulfilling to face it. And I think, as readers and intuitives and people that are interested in psychology, we do have our ways of embracing it, and we seek to understand each other and understand the pulse of what's going on in the world so that we can help heal and help heal ourselves. So, this is a unique time in history that we're all a part of. And, there's so many wonderful things, like just what we're doing now, that we can all connect
Right.
in this very Aquarian way.
Yeah. Onareo, how are things in Puerto Rico in terms of lockdowns and things like that?
Well, we have one of the highest vaccination rates in like all the US. So, but now we're getting a couple of the new cases. So we're still like, I think the governor is going to speak in a couple of days and kind of like figure out what he's going to do. But for people, I mean, our culture is very different in that sense. So that can be a good thing and a bad thing also. But the important thing is really, if you don't care about people in general, that's really going back to why we were saying about loving kindness, right? So you really have to care about other people, right? And it's you can make people care about other people. That doesn't matter what you do. You cannot. You might impose whatever. You cannot make people care about other people. It has to come from within, right? So as long as we nurture that light inside, that we are able to shine on others, and then there may catch a glimpse and say, "Oh shit! Like maybe I should do the same," So I think that's why I always say, and not to sound egotistical, right? But it starts with you, right? A lot of people want to be, as Amy was mentioning, light workers, and you'll see all this all over Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, light worker and light, all this stuff, and not to knock it, right? But you want to help other people, but then you look at your life and your life is a mess. Your life is not where it should be. Not to, again, it's everybody's life is a work in progress, right? But you cannot, just like you cannot be just paying attention to what other people are doing to make sure your life is good. Just the same, you cannot be trying to just make other people's lives better without making your own, good, right? Or better, or being healthy. And as you were mentioning earlier about your body or life in general making you stop and take a break, and it's really our bodies. When we pay attention to our bodies, it's like, oh, my body's been asking me to take a break for a long time and I haven't, right? And that
one of the things that the pandemic did for me personally is, because we couldn't go out, we had food delivered in from a company called Juice Press, and they had been a company that had stores that made organic juices for people in their stores, and then they started selling directly to people. So we've been drinking fresh juices, mixes of vegetables and fruits and God knows what, and I've gotten healthy. It's like when they used to say bad things about eggs, then someone got kidnapped and all his captors gave him was eggs. He came out healthier than he was when he first went in. So it's
I eat eggs every day, so I can't say anything about eggs, because eggs is
Good.
Eggs are good, and
but not for everybody. You have to find out what's good for you. But
I think that's you just hit the nail in the head. I mean, it's like you have to figure out what's good for you, right? And in the sense of not trying to live, obviously, and when we compare this to the whole pandemic and social responsibility, it's a different thing. We're not talking about personal health, right? We're talking about in general, but I think finding out what works for you, what is your, as Jeff was saying earlier, that meditation is like, what's your driving force, right? What's your motive? And if you don't like your motive, as Monty was saying, if you don't like your cave, then it's your job to change it. It's like nobody else can change it for you, right?
It's true. And sometimes there's experimentation involved with finding out what's right for you. You know, you have to try different things. And that's why we're always talking about innovation, you know, which is indicated astrologically for this time. It's good to experiment with different ways of eating or different ways of being or different ways of meditating. And this is part of the self-care. Where
And,
you
un-
look at the
and
astro
understanding that, you know, not one solution was for everybody, that we are unique, that we have our own DNA, our own fingerprints, our own uniqueness, so that while it's nice to process and listen and hear what others do, it's also our responsibility to figure out what works for us. And be so I'd like to believe I'm respectful of what others suggest I do, but ultimately I need to find a path for me that works. Because as much as I'm an advocate for showers, you know, and it's true. I discovered a long time ago that when I was in business, some of the best ideas I got in the shower. And I have this thing about why is it, and this is so politically not correct, but why is it that I'm able to be inspired prior to going to work by taking a shower, and I go to work, all I did is work. So when I had an office and I drove a half hour, 45 minutes, like, why is it that I can't be inspired where I work? Because the workplace was literally a work workplace, not a place for inspiration. And I was always thinking about how to create those shower moments at work, and it's like I did not know how to do it. So someone said, "Why don't you get showers?" I said, "But that's not the point. The point is, why not create a creative place where we can embrace that creativity and flow, and allow us to both get work done, but also create that environment so that we're all comfortable in our own ways, to be inspired in what we do." And so I still strive for that. I don't have that solution, and I'm not advocating that showers in the workplace is what's needed. I mean, I used to,
Sometimes,
years,
I mean.
years ago, when I did a lot of international travel and I would go to someone's office in London or go someplace on the West Coast, I understand that if you're just going from airplane to airplane to meeting, it's nice to be able to get a recharge, to get a refresh and stuff. But I do think that there's something to be said about connecting, and staying in that creative state, because when I'm in flow, I can handle hard times much better when I'm not. It's that when you're in flight or fight or flight mode. And so I haven't spoken to Deepak Chopra in a long time, but when I was friendlier with Deepak, he had engaged in some research at Duke University on on the brain. He did a whole study, because it turns out hibernation is something we know about animals, but it's a science we don't know that much about. And there was a lot of work being done in trying to understand how animals hibernate. And he was working with those research scientists who had done some incredible work to create a paper about his meditate, because he has some medical research on the power of meditation. And he fundamentally believed, and this is probably 6 years ago, that the same energy that it takes to go from calm to panic, right, from panic to flight mode, the same in 90 seconds you should be able to come back to a calm state. He absolutely believes that, and he was setting out to do some research to prove it. I don't know if he ever did, but it made sense to me. Like, why can't we go the other way, right, and get back to that calm? Because it's really, our brains are pretty powerful, and if we allow ourselves the possibility of what if on the negative, I'm telling you, what if on the positive, just as strong, if not stronger. We just have to let ourselves find that path.
Yeah, and based on what you were saying, Jeff, and that's actually what the workshop I did on the Fool. It was called Acting the Fool,
Oh,
and it's about facing our fears, and it really has to do a lot with it's all brain activity, really, like the funk and the nerves in the body. So a lot of people think it's only a intellectual process, and it's not. It's really a physical process that stimulates or triggers the intellectual process, but it is really a physical process. So until we do stuff in the physical, right, in our bodies, that's where we're gonna get the benefits of having a more calmer state of mind, etc. So stimulating the vagus nerve, it's really the counteracting to the fight or flight response, really. So showers is one of them. Cold showers, they, drinking cold water at times. Some people don't like drinking cold water, but that works for some people. And there's a whole bunch of exercise. I can send you the link later for people that want to try it out. But you can research vagus nerve exercises, and something that you should do daily, so you don't allow it to create that amount of work that it just, because it's the sympathetic nervous system and then the parasympathetic, right? So one of them creates cortisol and releases those stress hormones all the time, and the other one counteracts that. So really, just if you research that, that's really should help everybody out.
Well, did you know, Onareo, that Aries rules the fight or flight response?
Yeah.
We're the bravest and we're the most scared at the same time. So we learn a lot about techniques to bring us back into the moment in a calm state. And there's aromatherapy, there's tea time. I think that probably was invented to create that calm space. But
Ritual.
yeah, these little rituals, and the more you do them, the easier it is to come back,
Well,
instead of letting it escalate, into full-fledged panic.
there's also something called body memory. And in martial arts and shooting and all kinds of things like that, you train yourself, because if you are in a situation where you have to use those skills, you are going to be in fight or flight mode, and you're going to be all upset. And that's when body memory comes in, because you don't think about it. You'll just react. And that's what the purpose of meditation is you're setting yourself a body memory of calmness and merging with the infinite. Because if you've never experienced it, how can you go to it? How can you go to a refuge that you've never been to before? You can't, because you don't know where it is. So that's the purpose of all the disciplines, is so that when the rubber meets the road and you're in a scary situation, you don't have to think, because you won't be able to think.
And meanwhile, this is amazing time that we live in, where there's a yoga studio on every block, and there's access to spiritual information, everywhere. So these tools that we have access to, we can learn during this time of quiet, where we have more quiet or more time to think about our inner selves and to nurture our inner selves. That's the wonderful part of living now, right?
Yeah, because it's all about the nodes of the moon, where the orbit of the moon crosses what's called the ecliptic, which is if you project out the equator into space, that's where the eclipses happen. The nodes are going to retrograde back into Taurus and Scorpio, but they've been in Gemini and Sag. Those are the big learning signs. They're all about learning.
So much information, right?
Right. So unfortunately, that's sometimes people have to be, in Raja Yoga, they say you pray to the Almighty when you get stuck. So we've all been stuck with points and stuck in place, and stuck with problems, and stuck in a whole lot of other ways. And those who have used this time, I'm not saying you got to, build things and write things. I'm just saying if you've used this time to get yourself straight, you have not wasted your time.
Yes, it's that creating that what you were talking about, instead of reacting, it's like response, right? How are you able to respond to things? And if you're in reactive mode all the time, you're never going to be able to respond. Everything else outside of you is going to take control over whatever you do in your life. So getting back to that inner calmness, inner sense. And I love what you said about that memory, which is very important, as you say, in all these philosophies. It's really about not allowing it to get to the point where there's no return.
Yeah, I would throw in.
Go ahead.
I have a concept of bookmarking. That bookmarks are more than just for books. That when you find yourself in a point of pleasure or point of something where you actually had a positive experience, to take a note of it and to remember it, and to move that, if you will, from your active memory to your long-term memory, so that when you need to find your calm, you visualize it. And it's like if I'm having a blood pressure test, Well, my blood pressure may get elevated when I'm knowingly going to a doctor's office to be tested. If I could find myself under the dark skies, I get to be calm. I also can move the numbers. If I actually see the meter, I can move the numbers of the meter. But that's a different calming. That's just manipulation, perhaps. But I do encourage friends to bookmark experiences that are positive and to take active note of them so that they can go back there when needed, particularly when they need that reference point. So I don't know what else, I don't know spiritually what it's called, but I look at it as bookmarks, and I just go there and I tell other people to do the same. And if there's a better word for it, I would be happy to shift to it. I just didn't know the word. So
I like that. I do that, but I don't have a name for it. But I always bring myself to those. That's kind of like a coping mechanism for other stuff too. So I love that.
Yeah, you know, it's as the solstice is coming in and Capricorn's coming in, isn't dark colors with Capricorn?
Yes.
Because Amy's the color expert. I just wanted to point out that we're all wearing dark colors today.
So
And
we're
usually I
attuned.
wear very bright stuff. Jeffrey usually.
well,
wears-
I'm bright. I'm actually cold, so I'm wearing a sweatshirt on top of my otherwise bright
a dark sweatshirt.
He has a light in the dark.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yes, that's true.
I just think, we're all here. Everyone who's here. First of all, I want to thank you, everyone who's here, and bless you. And look, Michelle Marie is wearing black too. There's a
Look,
lot.
I'm wearing this shirt, and it's called the ramen. So this is like the ramen. So it's kind of like a tarot card with food, and it's kind of like comfort food. So it's perfect for
Wow.
winter solstice, comfort food. So
I've been making comfort food for breakfast, and the ramen is actually keeps more students in college alive than anything else, right?
yes, it does.
Another thing, in terms of ritual, are making an altar. That's like tradition for the Yule or going back to the pagans, before Christmas. To pull in pine and all so, parts of nature. Put your favorite tarot cards there. Light a candle. Have some aromatherapy. These are all things that tie into what we've been talking about, to put you in the moment of this cycle that we're in.
And Google pine needle tea, because it's been shown to be effective in terms of helping with COVID. Very effective, actually.
We've been having that every day.
But you need the kind of pines that have needles, but you can get it on the
White
internet.
pine, yes.
You don't want to use the wrong kind of pine.
Uh,
You don't want to don't mess with Mother Nature.
yes. No.
So
I wanted to say something real quick. Amy, you mentioned earlier about people, a lot of people do resolutions for New Year's, right? They do like, oh, I want to lose weight, or I want to get a car, or I want to do this and that. But people forget to make the space for it, right? So definitely winter solstice, the time of like maybe writing down what you're letting go of, right? And it's funny, when before we started, I pulled a card from your Wild Goddess Oracle, and it's the butterfly, right? And the message says, allow yourself to leave behind the past and what is no longer necessary, so you can truly be the person you have worked hard to become, which I think is so great, such a great message for the winter solstice.
It is perfect to be in the cocoon and to know that we're going to reemerge transformed.
I love that. That is great. We're closing in on the hour. Any final words, messages, or shameless self-promotion? Now is a good time.
Thank you, Michelle Marie, for the karma card plug. I just want to remind everybody that this was a time of the year when the calendar ran out of days. Back in the ancient time, they had what was called the Saturnalia. And all rules were off because Saturn rules.
I mean, once we let go and once we get in touch with ourselves, then it's like party.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was really like party, like you don't know who the father of your child is kind of party. They got really crazy. But I'm not saying everyone's has to go crazy. But I do think that even within the confines of the existing stuff, we have to have some fun. To celebrate the return of the light, because we are ritualistic beings. Look at our pets. They know what time it is. They do the same thing all the time without a clock. So we have that same thing, and we know that now is the time for party and to
After you take a nap,
and to listen to beautiful music and all the different festivals that
get
go on
dressed
now.
up. I'm big on getting dressed up.
Yeah. So
Sparkles.
I once again, I really want to thank everybody who watches this show, watches our new podcast, because I think this is a valuable thing. We have wonderful friends on like Onareo, and we all get to meet and pontificate.
We'll get back to doing readings every once in a while for people. We know you like that.
Yeah, we do. Because Jeff's really good at it. I like it when he does it with the creativity oracle.
I enjoy it too, and I also respect the need to have meaningful conversations, and so we can find balance. And hey, just truly an honor and pleasure to be part of this. I am every week. It's like, wow, this is fun.
Yeah,
It is
this is our ritual. We love this ritual.
And Lauren, we always thank you
And
for
Harry.
pulling this all together. And Harry, Onareo, it's so fun to see you on social media.
I want to say thank you so much for having me on again. I'm super excited every time I get to hang out with you guys. And this was such a great conversation. And I just wanted to say, if people want to follow me, just visit on Instagram. It's instagram.com/Onareo. And then you can find everything that I'm doing. You can find it there. So super
Cool.
excited
Every day.
and thankful.
And we actually have a past host, which I hope we're going to have on in the future. Right there, Diane and Michelle Marie. And I don't know if someone's on one of the other screens, and I don't know who's watching on Facebook, but we love you all.
And next week, we're going to talk about magic and manifestation for the new year with Christiana Godet, who's she's having a wonderful event called StarCon in Palm Beach in January.
In real life,
It's in real
IRL,
life.
everybody, IRL. We're not going to be there,
But
we
we're gonna be there virtually.
But the truth is, Amy and I never traveled even before this, as Jeff can attest. We let Jeff do all our traveling for us.
Well, we're so used to astral traveling,
This is
it
true.
tires us out.
Right. Astral the Oracles will be the new thing. Jeff, when are you going to start traveling again?
Soonish, I suppose. I have opportunities to visit Nashville in January, so we'll see. But going from Connecticut to Eastern Long Island is a trip. So that I've been doing a little bit. I haven't traveled outside the country, and I very much would like to travel outside the U.S. again in a meaningful way. I just don't have plans yet, but I hold out hope that in July, Camp Jeff will return in 2022.
Oh, great. In
Turks and Caicos.
Turks and Caicos.
And Turks and Caicos, yes. And so that's my goal. In terms of before that, I do not know. But I was thinking differently. But earlier today, Davos shut down for the year. So like when they shut down, like okay, maybe
Really?
Yeah, they canceled it today
World Economic Forum canceled the reset.
again. Yeah.
Well, there's the classic example of how there's nothing so bad that some good doesn't come out of it.
Yeah. So maybe for me, I'll travel to Long Island a little more often, and we get down to Turks in I don't know, maybe certainly before June. Anyway, thank you all for being part of Ask the Oracles today, because kind of blew it, right? Isn't it say if it's Monday, it's time for
Ask the
As we are calls.
Thank you all. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Harry. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back next Monday, same time.